on YouTube.
Yep, it'll be
All
on
right,
you.
so here we go. So making your yard bird and pollinator friendly, including for these beautiful painted buntings. So I'm preaching to the choir here, but we all know that spending time outside in nature is valuable. And 20 to 40 minutes outside connecting with nature will lower your cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So if someone asks you, well, why are you doing all this for, nature? Well, this is one reason. It's good for your health too. The studies show connecting with nature lowers your heart rate, decreases adrenaline, reduces negative thoughts, and increases concentration. In the University of Exeter study, researchers found a positive association between the number of birds and trees in a neighborhood with mental health of residents. Encourage your neighbors with that. People who live with more birds are less likely to suffer from depression, anxiety, and stress. And birds are important in agricultural and urban settings by providing a natural way to control unwanted pests. They're important in keeping the balance of nature. So, hey, we know sometimes these birds of prey will pick off, some of our feeder birds, but it's just part of the cycle of nature. But they're also like this, kestrel is also eating a lot of insect pests, and they eat mice and rats and all that good stuff. So is it any wonder that being outdoors and gardening are common activities in blue zones where the longest living people in the world reside? So think about that.
All right. So while it benefits us, adding the proper native plants is really essential to bird and pollinator populations. And again, preaching to the choir, I know you guys know this, but, and we probably are all familiar with Doug Tallamy's Homegrown National Park. But we can make a difference, reducing our lawns, putting in powerful plants that support biodiversity. And you will see it. You might not see it overnight, but you will see it. I know I have seen a big difference in my yard, and now have a resident hummingbird, which I'm proud of. So, loss, degradation, and fragmentation of important migratory bird habitat has been identified as potentially the largest individual threat to migratory birds, and that's the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And development has accelerated nationwide for our increased demands for food, space, and energy. So it's really important for all of us to kind of take a look at our yards and be a part of making a difference. By adding quality habitat, we're going to be helping those birds. Again, 2.9 billion birds have been gone in the last 50 years, and a lot of it is attributed to loss of habitat. So birds need three things to survive and thrive: food, protection, and water. And bird feeders are great, but feeders and native plants are even better. I mean, if you can get a lot of good native plants, that would be the best. I'm going to tell you, my hummingbird, I put up a feeder, but he won't go to it. He just goes to the plants, but that's okay. It's easier. So one of the things people say, well, native plants, why focus on that? You don't really need pesticides, and it's more biodiverse. We get a lot more different insect populations. And if you put the right plant in the right place, you really only need water for establishment. That's a really nice fire bush at my house. Native plants can feed the birds and the pollinators. We have dune sunflowers here, coral honeysuckle vine, firebush. The coral honeysuckle and the firebush are great for the hummingbirds. Cardinals eat the berries. Mourning doves love the dune sunflowers. They love to be under there all the time eating the seeds. Brown thrashers, all those are eating berries, seeds, getting nectar. It's really a great thing to have in your yard. In winter and in migration, berries and seeds sustain birds. So again, here's a summer tanager eating Virginia creeper berries. Virginia creeper is a vine, and a lot of people are kind of worried about these vines that pop up, but it will not damage trees. So you can feel okay leaving the Virginia creeper. You can pull out all those other invasive ones, but you can leave the Virginia creeper. And then on the right is a house finch eating seeds from a sweet gum. So a lot of time our berries come due when that migration comes. Virginia creeper berries are starting to get ripe for fall migration. Red mulberry trees produce a small amount. They actually have a little bit of berries from spring to fall, more in the spring, but they have them all year because I have a little one and it will have it all the time. But it also provides cover. And nesting birds rely heavily on caterpillars, but they prefer the moth caterpillars. Butterfly caterpillars aren't as tasty, it appears, for the birds. And then oaks are a keystone species. So that's keystone species, something Doug Ptolemy talks about. And the reason it's considered that is that it supports 530 species of caterpillars, if I could say that, in Florida, 900 in North America. So for us birders, we know a really good place to look right now is the oak trees. That's where you're checking out to see where your birds are. And Kathy?
Okay, so something to keep in mind that was a mind shift for me is that if you see leaf damage on your plants and they're native plants, that's good because it means something is eating it and you're providing nourishment for that caterpillar or that particular insect, which is going to bring the birds that eat those things. And if they're native, it will stay in balance because the native insects are going to be eating those native plants, which will be eaten by the native birds. So it all will balance out, and it's like your whole plants are not going to get destroyed. It's going to be okay. And despite internet advice, tent caterpillars don't need to be removed. And I saw a lot of them when I was at Wekiva just a couple of days ago. They won't harm healthy trees, but you know who really loves is one of the few birds that will eat them is the yellow-billed cuckoo. They love those tent caterpillars. So I would be thrilled to find one in one of my trees and be waiting for that cuckoo to come.
Mhm.
Be
I had
watching.
a whole mulberry tree full of them, but I didn't get a cuckoo,
But
unfortunately.
some other things will eat them as
The
well.
tree's kind.
So what about mosquitoes? Okay. So here's the thing. Mosquito fogging might seem like an easy fix because, there's a lot of diseases carried by mosquitoes for sure. But mosquito fogging will not only kill mosquitoes, but it harms birds, it harms the pollinators, it's harmful to pets, it's harmful to children, and it doesn't do a whole lot to reduce the mosquito population. It targets a small number of adults, it leaves the larvae untouched. So fogging undoes, like if you have those trucks that come around and so there's other things to do that will help. So dragonflies will eat about 100 mosquitoes per day. Hummingbirds eat about 700 to 2,000 per day. Bats eat like 1,200 per day. And they're also eaten by damselflies, frogs, fish, beetles, and other birds, of course. So here's something you can do. The next slide will show you something you can do in your yard, which is a mosquito dump bucket. And there's a little QR code, and you can scan that now, so you can learn more about this. But you basically get, two 5-gallon buckets, and you add some leaves and grass, and you put this mosquito dunk in it, and then you add a cover, a rescue stick, and you put a label on it so people know what it is, and it draws the mosquitoes in, and yeah.
And it
And,
will only kill mosquito larvae, not dragonfly larvae. So if a dragonfly happen to hit your bucket, you're okay.
okay, cool. Um, so this is a natural solution to mosquitoes that you might want to consider. And this did come from the Homegrown National Park .org website. And so to learn more, you can also go there. And it'd be a really neat thing to try out. And I believe you can buy those dunks
Yeah,
at
Lowe's. I just bought
yeah, the
some.
big box stores. So fun thing to try, and it'd be great way to reduce mosquito populations in your yard. So birds need protection. And so you might wonder, we get people that are new into birding and they put a bird feeder, they get really excited, but they have a plain yard with no trees. And you're not going to get birds because they need a place to hide. They need shelter. So what is best are native trees and bushes, grasses. Bird boxes are good. Um, if you're able to, depending on where you live, where the old trees are, if you have old trees, snags that are standing, that's great. They can support 300 different types of living things, from insects to birds to bats and flying squirrels and things like that. Um, you know, some of us have really strict uh, homeowners association, but if possible, keep those dead trees up and definitely have a good variety, different levels of trees, bushes, and you will find the birds will come because like I finally, my Florida privet has taken off this year and it's such good cover and I'm seeing birds in there all the time. Great place to hide. They go to the feeder back and it's excellent. So birds need the safety of shelter provided by trees and bushes, and you can clearly see which yard do you think is going to get a lot more birds? And they need that protection. There's no doubt about it. So here's a good option. If you like don't have trees, you moved into a new home and they took all the trees out. Native elderberry is a very fast growing bush, but it'll get really tall and it provides flowers for the bees and pollinators and berries for birds. Um, you want to keep it, you have to keep like trimming under it so you can mow around it and that good stuff. But it's a great option, especially if you want something quick and something that, the birds will just flock to. And birds need the comfort of having trees and bushes close to feeders to ensure a quick, safe place to move if a predator gets close, but not too close so the birds, the squirrels can jump from the tree to the feeder. You need 10 feet between the feeder and your house or nearby trees or bushes. Otherwise, the squirrels they'll be jumping a lot and they'll be enjoying your feeders. Just something to keep in mind if you have that option. And so, what about bee hotels? We're talking about pollinators. So, you can buy bee hotels, which is fine, but you can make your own. So, you can use things that are native plant canes, raspberry, blackberry, elderberry, pokeweed, asters, mints, tick seeds, and you can cut them out and you can put them in. You can create your own little box there. And you want to change it out every 2 years to avoid disease and wash it with mild bleach. And you're going to place this in a protected area where it gets both sun and shade. So, great thing to do for our native bees.
All right. So water, very important. Obviously, sometimes it's pretty dry, not lately, but it can get pretty dry here. So bird baths, ponds, water wigglers, and drippers. If you get your bird bath too deep, they're really not going to use it except for big, big birds. So you want to really concentrate on shallow feeders, gentle. They will be attracted by the drippers, the water wigglers, and these are a couple of products from Wild Birds that are shown here. This is courtesy of them, the photo, and they are attracted to it. So birds, if they're flying over and they're hearing that, they may come down when they're ready to land. It might pick your yard. And you'll have a lot of visitors. You may also have a few other squirrels drinking out of it. I have squirrels in mine, but the birds do love it. So, but pollinators, we sometimes forget about them, and they also need a little bit of water. And you can make your pollinator watering dish and just it's pebbles, water. They even have these cute little Wake Safe bee watering floats that can float in your bird bath, and they're just light enough that they won't sink, and the bees can land on it and drink out of your bird bath. I thought that was kind of a cute little product. So we also have a lot of videos on our YouTube channel. We talked about that, creating a homegrown national park. Doug Tallamy when he came and did that. Bringing Birds to Your Yard by John Robinson. We have that one. And Plants for Birds, The Caterpillar Connection by Deborah Green. Um, so let me go ahead and Kathy.
Okay. And this is not my current feeder setup, but this was a few years ago. And sometimes you have to make adjustments if you're feeding birds and you notice something like this. So this happened, this a while back, and you say, okay, I have a red-shouldered hawk that decided that it wants to hang out here. And so, you change the arrangement. You definitely need to take your feeders down for a week or two and let this hawk decide that there's a better place to hunt, because you're just going to be, scaring the birds away. And hawks that gotta eat too, but maybe not so much in my yard. I'm at my feeder. And once you create a space for nature, you never know what's going to show up. And I never expected to, well, on the right is the Cedar Waxwings, which will be joining our area again, probably December-ish. And they love the mulberries. And I have a mulberry tree. Now I have two mulberry trees, and they're great. And then I've had rose-breasted grosbeak show up at my house. I never thought those would show up here. And they'll come. Actually, well, this was a male that came one year, and it came to my black oil sunflower feeder. But last year I had three show up, and a lot of times they're in the native plants. They were eating beautyberry. So, you never know what's going to show up. And I've heard from a lot of friends they have the same situation, like surprised, especially during migration. So to find out more about native plants, there's websites that you can go to, and one would be the Florida Native Plant Society website. Now, we may have some people from other states, so check to see if you have a state native plant society, because the Florida one probably won't be very helpful to you. But if you are in Florida, they have lots of resources about native plants to your particular area of Florida. Okay, and
Sorry.
we also have, now this is for everybody. So National Audubon has plants for birds, and this is the exact web address. If you put this in, you will get to this specific web address. If you go to their main site, it's a little hard to find, but this will get you there. And so when you get in there, I love this resource right here. Then you're going to get an option on the next slide to put, and you don't have to put your email in. You can, and that way you'll get information, but you can simply just put your zip code in, and then you click find plants, and then it'll generate a whole list of plants with descriptions, which is on the next slide, of plants suitable to your area. So, I put in my zip code, and then, it comes in alphabetical order. So like the first one, what was American beautyberry? And then it's going to tell you, what birds it might attract. And you can see on there 13 different species for the beautyberry. That's a high value plant. 14 for American elm. So really cool. And then I'll show you, once you click on the plant, it gives you even more information. So there's a lot of good information right here from National Audubon. So the next slide is going to show that. So this is when you click on lance leaf tick seed, and it'll tell you, the attributes it has. It tells you other names. It tells you how tall it's going to grow, and what kind of soil and what kind of light conditions it needs. It will even tell you about pollinators that it could attract. Very, very helpful. And then what else I like is you can find out places where you can either order seeds or where you can go. So this is not all of them here in Florida, but you know, you have the Florida Wildflower Cooperative, and you can go to their website. There's mail order natives, green olive gardens, which we absolutely love. There's some listed in Jacksonville and other places. So you'll get a whole list. So where to begin? Okay. If you've not done this, start small, I recommend, unless you have a whole lot of time. Okay. If you have a whole lot of time, go for it. But don't overwhelm yourself. Start small, add a few plants, start in a section. You know, if you have time and people willing to help you, you know, you could do more. You can hire people to help design it, to help, you know, install it. It just depends on where you're at, what you can do. But if you don't have that resource, start small. I started a small section. I still don't have a whole lot, but I'm working on it a little bit at a time. You know, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step or a single plant. You know, start with something colorful. You know, start with, you know, firebush. That's a fun plant, easy plant to grow. And you'll definitely get pollinators, and there's a very good chance you'll get hummingbirds too. And what a fun thing. Tropical sage. Oh my gosh. Every day hummingbird comes to mind. So much fun to see. Tick seed.
And the painted buntings love to eat the tropical sage seeds.
So
In
these are
my
super
family.
easy to grow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're easy.
All right. So Susan's
All
going to talk.
right. So, okay. I know we talked about, there was a question about growing in sandy, and actually sandy is pretty much a majority of a lot of our soil down here in Florida. So the plants, when you go and look at the native Florida native plant, they will ask you what type of soil you have and then pick stuff out. So it's a good place to look. But know your space before. Sand, you know, take a look at where you're working. Is it sandy? Is it clay? Is it loam? Do you have a sandy side yard and a kind of a loamy, you know, where there used to be a lot of trees? Could be different. What's your lighting? You really, before you look at plants, and that's actually the fun thing, is looking through and seeing what plants. There's full sun, partial shade, deep shade, morning sun, afternoon sun. It's good to know what you're planting. It'll make a difference. What can't you change? Trees, ponds, streams. What native plants do you already have? We may have some that have been in your yard and you may not even knew they were native. But there's also your hardscape, your sidewalks, pavers, sprinklers. Look at the traffic patterns. What kind of plants are you walking on it? Does it need to be, is it going to be in the way? We don't want anything with, you know, that might have briars or anything on it if it's, you know, by a walkway. And then your challenges. What are your birds you were looking for? Pollinators. Do you really need to get that soil back up? Because, you know, you might have this turf. I had a side yard that had, it was supposed to be grass. It was nothing. It was a bunch of not tickseed, the beggar's ticks, and not much else, some sedge, for years before I started growing native plants. And then I'll show you some pictures later. I think a lot of the things in here are from there. Erosion, that's a big one. Drainage, those can be important. So we're just going to take a quick look at something that happened to me. My neighbor, of course, you know, I have a very narrow side yard, but he cut down 4 trees. So the yard was deep shade all day, pretty much. And then it came, you know, partial shade to full afternoon sun, which is the hot part of the sun. Drainage, it had terrible drainage issue. The rains came down, it would run into the garage because the garage door was below grade. It doesn't look that inclined, but it was about 18 inches from back to front, which is enough during our hurricanes to cause a lot of problems. Every single thing in this yard had to be removed because it was all, you know, it was all shade plants. And then, of course, a handy neighbor also dumped oil. So a lot of it had to be taken to the dump because if anybody knows me, you know, I love to reuse anything, but some of it just had to go and be dumped. So looking at that yard, here's what I saw. I saw heavy wet soil. contamination. One of the trees was camphor, and those were contaminated by the oil. And then there was a question, is that wood a contaminant? Lighting became full afternoon sun and, sun, partial sun in the morning. There were fences, there's an AC unit, a low garage door, sprinklers, drainage, a lot of problems. It would drain into the garage, a lot of erosion. So things that had to be addressed. So of course I could remove contaminants and wood. Can't do much for those existing features, and I really can't do anything with the lighting, and you have to look at the elevation. So here's the new plan. This is just the side yard. A lot of native plants, a lot of hardscaping put in edges, walls, a block retaining wall around the air conditioner because again, this pad is lower. Added a little drain. We got a lot of plants. This is where I see some of the buntings eating a lot of salvia. I have a lot of different native tropical sage salvias in here, and they're in there. Native wild lime, which does have prickers, so it has to be cut back away from the path, but the birds actually really like that. Simpson stopper, necklace pod, just because it's cool. And then a little patch of annuals, Cory honeysuckle vine, just a lot of different things that bring in a lot of different, insects, butterflies. It's wonderful. So this is what it looked like, emptied out, kind of boring, nothing there. It's not even that big. First thing, drainage. Had to add gutters because everything was really going down the hill. Used one of these easy drains, they're called. This is the drain. If you look in this picture, the gutter's coming out. I built this weird little rocky thing to drain out the water. And there's a little, almost a pond there, you can't tell. And it drains across that path and over under some of the garden on the other side. So added native plants. The goal was I want to try to replace some of that, some of the shade on the house because that's the hot side of the house. And I seriously miss those trees, but can't do much about it, not my yard. So I did decide on the wild lime because I do like butterflies, and that is one of the larval hosts for a butterfly. Simpson stopper, I'm waiting for that to get a little bit bigger. Lots of salvia. So things throughout the air. I did add edging. We had these bricks all over the place and used those to kind of make a pathway through. And I think it came out very successful. Again, I did want to put something that would shade the air conditioner. So I did, this is not a native porterweed, but it was the right size and it was something in the yard so I could move it there. And then we also did, I don't know if you can see these walls, we kind of helped with that unit to kind of keep the water from going down that way. And there is another drain right in front of the garage. So there's a comment, you mentioned oaks are keystone species. Does that include live oaks? That includes all oaks. Every oak has a lot of insects, a lot of caterpillars. It's wonderful. And here's, if you need help, the Homegrown National Park website has a lot of cool things. Design a native plant landscape. So, I mean, it's good if you can get help, but you can kind of take a look at different internet supports, information. If you're looking at this habitat designometer, you can go formally designed, even with native plants. They're not excluded from formal designs. If you go over to Europe, they actually like some of our native plants in their formal gardens because they're different and unique. We're buying their stuff, they're buying ours, but we need to get back to using ours. Semi-designed, I would say that's what my yard is. Semi-wild and natural. And then there's wild and natural. So it's kind of cool that they doing that. And hedgerows. There's a lot to be said. If you look at information on it, birds don't have a lot of areas to hide, especially painted buntings. They love the bushes. So these are some samples of, little hedgerows. You can use them for screening. This is mine looking into the neighbors. I've got beautyberry, I have wild coffee because it is under, there's a big live oak up on top of it you can't see. And some of the other things are the neighbors' plants, but it's a nice area for the birds. But you can put in, if you have shade, the wild coffee, firebush, beautyberry, Simpson stoppers, and Walter's viburnums make great hedgerows. Florida privet, Yaupon holly, wax myrtle, senna privet, southern elderberry, fiddlewood, and marlberry. Now you do want to check that the native plant information on those plants because some of them are wider than others. So like an elderberry gets very wide, it does have suckers. Sometimes that's nice on a hedge, it'll help fill it in quicker. But if you don't have a lot of work, you want to really take a look and decide what you need.
Okay, so we're going to talk about what about under a tree canopy. So you maybe are very fortunate and you have some native trees that are very large and have the canopy. So Doug Ptolemy says that if we plant native shrubs and understory plants beneath the existing canopies, we create this multi-layered three-dimensional landscape that mimics a natural forest. If you walk through a natural forest, it's not just trees with grass under it. There's all these other mosaic of plants that live under there, some very, very small, and that increases biodiversity for, insects, birds, and other wildlife. So that is something definitely to consider. And again, you can consult native plant societies and the native plant nurseries to get ideas of what would be appropriate under different types of native trees, but definitely in consideration. There's a tendency to want to make everything look neat, but that the understory is extremely important for a lot of birds to hide in. All right, we're
Sorry, my bad.
the next one. All right, so where you can, leave the leaves and the sticks and all the stuff that falls from the trees because it's decomposing. And we know that many types of birds will pick through that to eat the insects, to eat the seeds that fall. If you have a yard with understory and leaves, you're going to see your thrashers, you're going to see ovenbird, you'll see the wrens, you'll see in season the sparrows under there. That's what they need. So if you can't do that in all of your yard, have a spot in your yard where you can have that, those leaves and things that fall under, and we don't need to rake up everything. And there are many pollinators like bees that they nest underneath the leaves. So you need to leave the leaves if you can.
And I think Doug Dallamy talked about putting bushes under your trees to hide. If you live in a neighborhood and it's all like, oh, you can't have all this stuff. If you have those coffee plants, when they get big or other bushes around the base of your plant, it kind of hides all those leaves, leaves them for the birds, but the neighbors can't see them, especially if you have a homeowners association.
And if you have space, maybe not your front yard, but a brush pile is great. It's a great habitat for birds to nest. It's a great habitat for things like lizards to hide, which you have a dog like me, he loves to find the lizards, or the birds that eat the lizards and the reptiles and things like that. So there's perches there. So if you can, have a brush pile. And so we'll talk about a few of our favorite native plants for starting your bird and pollinator garden. These are just not a complete list, but these are just some of the favorites, easy things to grow. So the first one is going to be the tea bush. And I planted my first ones this last spring and I'm really happy with this. So the tea bush is very attractive to bees and butterflies and other pollinators and hummingbirds. And because there's a lot of insects, birds may hang around and eat. They're not going to eat all your bees, but they might eat a few bees. So this is a long-lived perennial shrub. It's full sun, part shade, gets 3 to 10 foot tall, and it's cold sensitive. And the next one is firebush, one of my favorites because it's so easy to grow. And firebush, lots of pollinators. Birds eat the berries. Hummingbirds love the flowers. It does grow really fast. So like if it's in the front of your house, like I do, I have to trim it frequently, but it grows really well. It belongs here. You don't have to give it a lot of special attention, and it's gorgeous. You're gonna have tons of butterflies. And then tropical sage, which Susan gave me seeds, and so I started planting these, and they're wonderful. Hummingbirds, like Susan said, painted buntings, cardinals will eat the seeds, and other small birds. Pollinators are going to come to these. This is annual to short-lived perennial flower. It reseeds itself. They get 2 to 6 feet tall and about 2 foot wide, full sun, part shade. It's very adaptable. And it does come in, usually you see red, but sometimes you get white ones, sometimes you get pink ones.
Okay, American Beautyberry. This is usually one of the first ones they recommend when you start planting native plants. And I bought one for the first, and at the beginning I was like, I don't know, I don't like the birds. For some reason, my birds weren't going to it in the beginning, and now they're all over it. So, but it does have the blooms and the pollinators. It does have blooms, the berries. It is deciduous, so you will need, if you want to keep it in shape, you're going to need to trim it. It is a long-lived perennial shrub, 4 to 8 feet tall by 3 to 6 feet wide. Full sun, part shade. You can cut back in the winter to keep the form. Um, just make sure. Now, some people like to cut it when the berries kind of dry up, and but actually, I have to say some of my cardinals like it better when the berries are dried up. So maybe not if you don't like the look of it. I suppose you can trim it, but I'm a bird person, so I leave it for the birds. Since they're eating it dried, I will leave it. And I will have to look up the scientific name for tea bush because I'm not really a plant. I'm more of a bird person, but it is available at Green Isle Gardens. Partridge pea, I love partridge pea. It is my favorite, I think. Well, one of them. I have a lot of favorites. But the flower, it's really abundant. I have a side yard, and if you come by in the summer by my house, it's just full of partridge pea, dune sunflower, um, coreopsis, and gaillardia. It's wonderful. It has lots of seeds. It is really, it does reseed. So have a little area that you just kind of pull the weeds out of, and you can just have it every, summer. It's beautiful. Birds are in it. The bees love it. Oh my. Bees and butterflies. It does have massive showy flowers, 3 feet tall by 3 feet wide. It is a larval host for many butterfly species. So you plant things like this, you're going to see a lot of them. And thank you for getting that for me. Dune sunflower. So if you have a really crummy area, bad soil, Dune sunflower does pretty good there. It has real good sunny blooms. It can get leggy and you may need to cut it back. It may try to go places, so you might need to trim it. It does pair well with gaillardia. I'm sorry I didn't get a picture of this when the gaillardia was blooming because they've kind of passed, but it was kind of a nice mix of the yellow and the red together. But the birds eat the seeds, pollinators love it. You can't go wrong. It is an annual to short-lived perennial, 2 to 4 feet high by 2 to 4 feet wide, full sun, and it will reseed if it gets too leggy, you can just cut it back and it'll probably reseed um, over the winter. Sunshine mimosa, ground cover with those unique pink puffs. I have this too, Oliver. Love it. It's great for the small pollinators. Not as much for the birds, but it's still a um, good ground cover, full sun or part shade. It does, I have it growing also in my, what we call freedom turf, if you don't do anything to your grass. And it just tolerates the mowing. Um, and you may want to keep it in either a barrier planter or keep it trimmed. It does, everybody loves the little flowers. Frog fruit is another great ground cover and nectar source for butterflies and larval hosts. It goes about 2 to 3 inches high and can form dense mats. So you can use that instead of grass or in small areas to kind of replace grass. You know, grass is like, it's not as fun. You get frog fruit. We went on we had an insect survey at a school, and guess where the hot place was? All the frog fruit growing in the lawn had the most interesting pollinators in it. So little oaks are, people, they talk about oaks and the benefits of oaks. Um, but you're like, oh, I don't have a space. But there's a lot of smaller oaks and they're just as beneficial. I think if anybody has read Doug Tallamy's book, he looks at those little oaks and he's got one little, the little caterpillar hanging off it, because the oaks may be 2 feet tall. They're all beneficial. Chapman's oak, there's one actually at Mead Gardens that's been there. I think it's 100 years old, somebody said. They only get 3 to 15 feet tall. While they can form thickets, obviously this one never did, they are long-lived perennial shrub. Myrtle oaks, they can get 5 to 30 feet tall and form thickets. It's a long-lived perennial evergreen. So all of these, you can use them as borders, you can use them as individual trees, you keep them trimmed around. Um, Runner oak is 3 to 6 feet tall. It forms clones or thickets. Again, sand live oak, a little bit taller, 20 to 30 feet tall. And turkey oaks get 30 to 40 feet tall, 10 to 15 feet wide. But these are all good, opportunities or different things that you can use versus putting in a big tree. If you don't have the room, you can still have an oak tree.
All right, so here's not a complete list. Here's some ideas of where you can buy Florida native plants, at least in the Central Florida area. So of course, there's Green Isle Gardens in Groveland, and do go on the websites because hours are limited at these places. So be sure you check the website before you go out there. And you can also see a current plant list of what they currently have available. There's Eden of Wings. I believe Lori put this in the chat. It's open, it's an enterprise and it's open Thursday to Sunday. They have a butterfly garden. I've heard great things about it. I definitely want to check that out. There's 4 Acres Farm in Christmas, Florida that opens once a month. It's open this Saturday, so you might want to check that out. I'm not sure of the hours. Native plant sale. So we have coming up on the 18th of October, Backyard Biodiversity Day. And Orange Audubon will be there. This is a big project of the Native Plant Society, the local chapter, Tarflower. There'll be plants for sale. My recommendation, come early because the best ones go fast. And they have a neat thing. You can buy the plant and they have a plant babysitting area because if you want to get the plants and then you want to go look for warblers, you can do that. They'll babysit your plants. There's there's plant sales at Lou Gardens. There's Grovember at Mead, and that's in November. And there's pop-up plant sales all over. And yeah, this is a good time of year to go look.
And I think somebody in the chat mentioned that if you do join the Native Plant Society, at the beginning, they have a lot of, what do you call it, an auction, a
Yeah,
raffle?
they have a raffle. And sometimes we do that too, but they
Yeah,
definitely do that at
definitely
most
do
every
that.
meeting. And you can learn about the native plants when you're there because they'll talk about the ones that are being raffled. Yeah, I've won a few of my plants there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, I might, if you look at the one picture on the right, that liatris there is from the
Mhm.
Native
Okay,
Plant Society.
next slide.
All right.
And there are some other things you could do to help birds that we want to mention to you. And so keeping your cats indoors is huge. Um, it's beneficial not only to the wildlife, but it's also beneficial to the cats. Indoor cats live an average of 12 to 17 years. Outdoor cats live an average of 2 to 5 years. Um, Outdoor cats kill approximately 2.4 billion birds per year. That's through research from Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And if you have cats, and big thank you to Lori because this sure works. Coffee grounds, very effective, very effective. I had all kinds of problems with some neighborhood cats, and as long as I rarely put some coffee grounds out there, they don't like the smell and they stay away. There's also things like citrus peels, sprays, ammonia on a rag. Um, but I think coffee grounds smells good to me, and it's a natural thing and it doesn't harm the birds at all.
And just want to mention Starbucks does give away coffee grounds. If you're not a coffee drinker and you're like, well, that doesn't help me. They
Mhm.
do give away, they say it's for gardeners, but you can use it in your yard for
You're a
cats.
gardener, right? We're all gardeners if we're doing native plants. And then it's very important to keep your feeders and bird baths clean. Um, use soapy water, wipe down, rinse with each filling. Um, you can do different percentages. You know, if you're using something like, I don't use bleach, I actually use vinegar and water. Um, but you want to keep them rinsed out clean. If you do see a sick bird on your feeder, you need to shut down your feeders and clean everything off and wait a week or two and then put them back. Because, you know, just like people, birds can spread disease to each other and we want to, you know, keep them healthy. And
Yeah, and
that's,
this is actually a bird that I did see in my feeder. So we did have to close it down because I'm not sure it's sick, but it sure looks pretty bad to me.
yeah, if you're not sure, it's better to be cautious.
So other ways you can protect birds. Glass, we don't think about it, but glass is reflective or it's transparent, so it's invisible to birds. And 1 billion birds are killed by glass collisions in the US alone annually. 40% of the strikes are caused by our residential windows. So there's a lot of things that we can do. Like if you look on the left, yeah, it looks like sky. A bird might just fly right into it. Or if you have plants, maybe you're not don't have reflection, but you have plants by the window. The glass is invisible. It may try to go to those plants and hit the window. You can see up here is feather friendly brand film. You can do a lot of different things. All you need to remember is that I call it the rule of 2 by 2. Some places will say 2 by 4, but if you have hummingbirds, and we do have a lot of hummingbirds in our area, so I always say 2 by 2. Use a 2 by 2 grid to cover the glass. It has to be on the outside. You can use lines or strings 2 inches apart. There's all kinds of things, even temporary measures, washable glass markers, stickers, tapes, window cling, liquid, bar soap, tempera paint, dots. If you're doing dots, they should be a 1/4 inch in diameter. If you're using strings or paracords, 2 inches apart vertically. Lines should be 1/8 width or greater. Pre-made dots, lines, and window films, you can purchase that online. I just have in my backyard, I just have the window cling liquid and put little dots on mine. It's probably could be a little bit nicer, but it does the job. I don't have.
And I have, just going back to that real quick, I did buy it because I have windows like right in front of my feeders and I was having an issue with strikes. So I got the feather friendly, not expensive. You can get a residential pack. You get a strip, it has the dots right on it. You get 2 measuring tapes, you get a friend to help you put it up. I didn't have no more strikes. And I can still see out. I can take photos through my window still. So if you know you're getting strikes, I would highly recommend that or one of the other techniques.
Mhm. All right, so Sunday is our yards tour, native yards tour. So might be kind of fun to see what different people are doing. So we are having one to help. We're trying to raise money for our new nature center, as you know. So it's kind of a fundraising thing, but you can have a get some good ideas, see what people are doing. Tickets are $15. You can get them at Wild Birds Unlimited. Um, you can get them online at orangeaudubonflorida.org. And it'll just be a fun thing. Just kind of take a look at what's happening, all of those good ideas. So, any questions that we
We had,
haven't answered?
yeah, we had some in the chat that maybe we didn't get to. I
Back
want to
here, I have to put my glasses
Sure.
on.
And appreciate those of you that have been answering questions in the chat because we know we have some knowledgeable people on the chat tonight, and we thank you for doing that.
Oh, I
So
think Cindy had mentioned a bush you have on your yard that birds go to. I did not catch the name of it.
was that the elderberry?
I think it might be the elderberry. So that elderberry bush is in my backyard, and it I love elderberry. A lot of people hate it because it has suckers, but if you put it where you're mowing around it, I don't think it's that bad of a bush. It does grow fast. It does have berries right now. Northern mockingbird is kind of claiming it, but when the flycatcher, great cresteds are in season, they're sitting on the line behind it, eating the bugs out of it, and all the birds do stage out of it to go to the feeders because I do have it as part of one of the bushes around by where the feeders are. But that is an elderberry bush. But there are a lot of great native bushes. You need to look what soil you have, what you want, and, look from there. It's been great. I love Delcy said the bees drink from her bird bath.
Oh, fun. And the native plant gardens will also, if you bring in photos of your yard or like, okay, I have this area, this soil, this, they can guide you. Like, you want a bush, they can guide you. That they can be very helpful in that.
Yeah, and I know somebody said, I hope I called code on the tree killing neighbor. He actually didn't kill the tree, but there was a stump, the camphor tree. I cut the camphor tree out, but then he dumped oil over it, which was not very nice because it was Christmas and I got to smell oil and had to move up my getting rid of that stump. So,
So any other questions? We appreciate everyone's attention and
and then
truthfully, if you've not tried this, you'll be surprised how quickly you're going to see results, especially for your insects and the pollinators.
oh, oh, it's so fun. I think if you don't have 4 to 5 different types of butterflies in your yard, you need to plant some
Mhm.
native plants and pollinator.
And you'll see, like the birds, I'm noticing, as my garden is evolving, the diversity of birds is changing in a good way. Oh, good. Thank you for taking
Um,
screenshots.
and I think the easy drains, basically, it's kind of like a cheater French drain. It's like a tube with foam around it. You just dig a big trench, you put it in, you hook it up to a drain that all the pieces parts are at Home Depot or Lowe's or any of those box stores. Um, and it has made such a difference. I used to have, honest, a hurricane would come and I would have water going down that side yard into the garage. One time it was so bad it got into the laundry room. So between putting up gutters to help divert the drain, divert stuff to the drains and having the drain right in front. I have one right in front of the garage door. That really makes a big difference. Tea bush, one of my favorite plants. It does my hummingbird. I think my hummingbird prefers it over firebush, which is kind of crazy, but um,
Mine flies between them because now I used to only have like firebush in one section, but now I have firebush in two sections and then tea bush. So now they do a circuit, which is more like in nature what you're going to see a hummingbird do. They're not going to stay in just one little area. They're going to kind of fly around. Now they have that, so it's really nice.
yes, and again, the Florida Native Plant Society, the meetings are free and open to the public. They have great speakers. I've been to a few, and
Mhm.
native plants if you want to get the drawing.
Yeah, it's fun to get the native plants. Bring some dollar bills.
Yeah, bring dollar bills so you can buy those tickets because it's good, you know. plants can be hard to get, but remember, the more you plant, you'll have seeds you can share, you'll have
Mhm.
starts, and you can share. Um, I think I've shared salvia seeds with everyone.
Yeah,
But
so, and that's great, yeah,
I
and then
love
again,
salvia. It's all
when,
over my yard, and I don't mind it. I do not have a formal yard, so it can grow wherever it wants, and otherwise it'll be cut
and if
where I
you have
don't want
native plants, start sharing your seeds with others. Just
it.
keeps
Yeah, yeah. All
going.
right.
Okay, so, don't forget to get your tickets for the arts tour, because that's
Yeah,
this Sunday. And next week, we won't be in Bird Chat, we'll be at Lou Gardens with the BAT program,
that'll
which
be fun.
that'll be a lot of fun. So we thank all of you for joining us, and we'll have this on YouTube really soon. And you can share it with your friends who maybe want to just think. Remember, you can start small. You don't have to do your whole yard. Start small. And when you start seeing like all these things happening and it's just really relaxing to watch, then you'll add more. It just kind of goes that way.
Hmm. It's very fun to see even the pollinators, butterflies,
Oh,
different
yeah,
species, crazy insects.
that's for sure.
But
Okay, any other last minute questions? Okay, I think that's it. Thank you all for hanging
thank
out.
you guys.
And
Thank you, Kathy, Susan.
you guys have a great evening, and all this rain will be good for growing those plants.
Yeah, very good.
And happy migration to everybody. We'll see what shows up tomorrow.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye. I'm going to end the meeting now.
Okay.